Welcome to the Ave Podcast. This is a short, mini bite-sized edition of the Ave Podcast. But obviously, the cultural touch point that's been happening in the last couple of weeks is this whole Jimmy Kimmel versus the administration versus censorship and free speech situation that's been going on. And if you're living under a rock, I feel sorry for you because this is basically taking over everything. And I just wanted to share just a few quick thoughts on it. Like I said, this is a bite-sized version of the Ave today. But I just want to share a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me. First off, and this might sound funny to say, but I was actually pretty surprised at how much the late night community is united, and not just on this front. I think it seems like period. I mean, I think you've been seeing that. This is not like how it was, when I was growing up, where Leno and Letterman were basically on this Cold War situation, and everybody was in their own worlds. Arsenio included, Jon Stewart included. It wasn't just the Daily Show that he was doing, by the way. But it's interesting to watch how they've all basically have united, for Kimmel in this situation, and watching how Kimmel has basically, even in his monologue, when he was stating how, they're coming after Jimmy and Seth Meyer next. And if that happens, Jimmy Fallon, by the way, and if that happens, they need to be 10 times, the people need to be 10 times as loud as they were for him. And this is something that, like I said, if this was Leno and Letterman in the 90s, I'm not to say they wouldn't support each other in this situation that happened to them, but I'm not 100% sure if they're saying that on their show. So I think that's kind of impressive to see. And like I said, you usually do see them on each other's shows now, and like a Conan O'Brien will come on a Jimmy Kimmel show or whoever. And, I think these guys largely are friends, or at least they're very friendly with each other. And yeah, like I said, back in the day, I'm not sure if these late night show hosts would have been relishing the support from their peers like this, but to see it happening on that front, and you saw another example of Jimmy, expressing those thoughts with regards to them. I thought that was actually really cool. That was one of the things that kind of threw me. You would think it'd be, this is not in order, of course, but I actually thought that was kind of cool, that they were kind of sticking to each other's corners. As far as the monologue was concerned, I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it was very funny in terms of Jimmy's side, which is interesting to me because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think watching the groundswell of just the average person, just people in my community, friends, family members, watching everybody kind of gearing up to watch a live show. I think in this day and age, especially how we watch TV now, everything is consumed by when you're ready to watch something, the on-demand life that we live. To see how everybody was getting together and basically scheduling their time to watch this, potential monumental event or monumental monologue that was going to happen. And everybody was waiting to see what Jimmy was going to say. I thought that was actually kind of cool. It was almost like a throwback moment. This is not something that we're used to seeing anymore, because at this point in time, how we consume content, we'll watch it when we're ready to watch it. We'll watch it on Instagram. We'll watch it on YouTube. We'll watch it. We'll pre-record it and watch it the next day or 2 days later. So to watch everybody like willing to, to forgo bed, their regularly scheduled bedtime and watch this is actually pretty impressive. And I think the ratings support that out, because I believe it was, even though they lost 20% of their viewership through the station, that it was preempted, and like 20, I think that was like 20 TV stations across America. So like they lost 20% of their regular watchers. The ratings were still so huge, it didn't matter. It was a 6.2 rating, which is, I think Kimmel normally averages about maybe like 1.5 to 2 million a night. So that was huge. And it speaks to, I think, the groundswell of support. That's just regular Nielsen ratings. I'm not even talking about social media. I think it was way more than that. I think as of now, this is definitely by far the most viewed video that he's had this year, for sure. And it might be bigger than that. It might be, I'm sure it'll approach close to all-time levels by the time this is all said and done for him anyway, when it comes to social media and YouTube and whatever else. With that said, I thought the monologue, especially, which is everybody was waiting for, I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it was funny. I also think it would have been hard to F up that monologue. And I've been watching Jimmy Kimmel since the Man Show. He's a pretty funny guy. He's pretty smart as well. So I'm not surprised the way he kind of laid everything out. He's hosted like the Oscars 3-4 times. Like, this is not something where I would have been surprised if he kind of messed up the monologue. I don't think anybody was expecting that. I think they were just waiting to hear what he was going to say. And for you to have most of the people on your side, including some of your enemies, that's basically standing for the rights of free speech and censorship. I mean, like I said, again, I think it would have been hard to fumble the ball in this situation, right? It's almost like a layup for him at this point. And it's just crazy that we're in a situation where you're actually having this conversation about the violation of your free speech rights, for your voice to be silenced or threatened to be silenced. And, if you read some of these reports as well, there is a bit of a money trail. If you look at you can Google the story between Sinclair Broadcast Group and Nexstar that's trying to merge together to the tune of a $6.2 billion merger. And they got to step in front of the FCC to approve it, which has the administration involved in that. So between that and I think just panicking and making a quick decision to pull the show, I think was probably not the greatest move. But then at the same time, with I think the groundswell of support from social media, and I think the biggest thing is the value of the dollar. Is what swung him back on the air, because I think if people weren't threatening to cancel their subscriptions and protesting for the Disney and canceling all their Disney Plus subscriptions, be damned, just for the right to support Kimmel on this, money talks. It shows you another example of we the people still have rights, and we still have power where we can send our dollar in a different direction if you're not careful. And I think Disney and ABC, they kind of saw that point too, which, they'll take more comments from Trump as long as it's not affecting the bottom line. So at the end of the day, that's what matters, right, in this situation. And let's be real, like if that backlash from that wasn't so heavy, he might still be off the air right now, because there was talks about, you do hear some reports that ABC was always going to bring him back, but you heard a lot more reports saying that, you're unsure you weren't sure if he was actually going to be coming back on the air. Like was the talks at the beginning. And which is crazy, because since he's been on ABC, other than maybe Grey's Anatomy, which is an ensemble cast, he's probably the most consistent face in person on that network. So for the plug to be pulled that quickly, I got to say, if I'm him, if I'm going forward, like if I'm Kimmel, I'm sorry, I got to look at all of my options now. After being with this company for 2+ decades, since 2002, and to have the rug pulled out from you that fast over, comments that I think largely people were kind of confused as to what did he actually say that got him taken off the air to that degree. And like I said before, I think it was deeper than just his comments. Like I said, if I'm him, I got to weigh out all my options now. Like late night TV does not have the same effect as it did 20 to 30 years ago. That kind of all the numbers kind of lay that out. The late night genre, that construct is I would say it's based on my demographic and upwards. The younger generation isn't really consuming late night TV in that matter in the same way in front of their TV. They're catching it on highlights on YouTube and TikTok, and, and clips on Instagram or wherever they get their social media, right? It's not being consumed the same way. So it doesn't have the same effect that it once did. They don't have the same attachments to this particular genre. But if I'm Kimmel, I have to now look at my value, my power right now, because clearly with all the support that's happened, I do have it. And he's earned the value of ownership. At this stage, what do you do with those options? Do you build out your own media network where maybe you're not in front of a camera 5 days a week? Do you take a much needed break and just relax your mind and your body and spend time with your family? Do you go the route of maybe because of, all of this confusion and mess, do you just go to the streaming route and maybe, go behind the paywall subscription route and, go on Disney Plus and just say what you want to say going forward without the threat of the FCC coming after you? And you hope he doesn't go that route, because obviously at the end of the day, you if you want to come off of like a main television network and go the streaming route, you want that decision to be your decision. You don't want to be pushed into that decision. There's a difference. And he's got a lot of, I think to me, he's got a lot to think about here if he hasn't already thought about this. I'm sure there's a team of people and his family is, putting some of these ideas into his head if it's not already in his head. Because at this stage, he's 57 years old. Again, he's been doing this since 2002. He's still young enough that he has a future ahead of him where he can still do stuff. Because again, with where media is now, where you can basically create a multimedia conglomerate from your couch, retirement age doesn't necessarily have to end at 65, right? Especially for somebody like him. And let's be honest, man, he's got a lot of leverage and power, and his contract ends in 8 months. It ends at May of 2026. So at this stage, as long as the ratings are holding up, and if there's a residual effect of this boost that's happening from now, if it can carry into May and you're still on people's minds by then, if we can hold up until then, Kimmel will never have as much power and leverage as he does right now. And if he can hold that attention, he'll never have that much power again in May when his contract is up. Again, does he stay with NBC? Do they have to double up on the money? I mean, he's got a lot to think about, but the way that the rug got pulled up from underneath him, if I'm him, I'm, like I said again, I got to rethink all of this. And it's not just at this stage now, because I've been doing it for so long, it's not necessarily the money at this point that I'm looking at, because what happened here can never happen again. If I'm Jimmy Kimmel, it can never happen again to me. Where are we going with censorship? I think the scariest thing that's happened, throughout this process to me is that I think what the administration is kind of showing you right now is that they will step on the line, and that the habitual line stepper, they'll step on the line. And when it comes to free speech and censorship and stuff, and First Amendment rights, especially United States, the fact that they're willing to step on the line is, this is new territory here that we're breaching. And that should also be a red flag to everyone. And I'm of the belief that if it could be shown that the line can be stepped on, who's to say that it won't be stepped on again? Who's to say, what companies are going to be willing to walk in those same footprints and do the same thing and walk on that same path to possibly censor other voices, or at least to put a tighter grip on you? It's a bit of a dangerous game right now, which I think this is why this has to be nipped in the bud immediately. And I think this situation isn't going to be going away soon. Jimmy Kimmel right now is still making jokes on the president's back. The administration is still airing their grievances and displeasures towards it, to the point that they're still threatening the network in terms of further moves against them. And this is all interesting to watch, because I think essentially right now we're in uncharted territories right now. We're swimming in waters that we've never swam in before when it comes to this, right? And at the very least, the First Amendment and free speech and everything else is definitely being tested. You know, you got to pay for free speech now, right? Like De Niro said. Like I said, this bears watching in the future, because I think this is actually really important. I think this is more important than people think. And I think this is definitely more important than people think. And, you know, what you don't want is like the trickle effects to come down on the people. So, like I said, this is something that bears watching, because, again, this is unprecedented. I don't know where this is going, but we're going to have to stay tuned for this and keep our eyes open, because, you know, if you have a voice or you're creating content, I mean, you're already seeing the titles of the categories of people being shadow banned on social media and things like that. So you're already seeing little remnants of it already. You don't want it to go further than this, because, you know, if we don't have our voices, what do we have, right? So this is something to think about. But like I said, this is a very short, bite-sized edition of the Ave Podcast. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with 2 episodes, actually. One of them will be on a Friday. And, you know, I'm looking forward to some of these shows coming out. I got to re-release some of these memory lane episodes, you know, backtrack into the catalog. And like I said, man, if you ever want to go back into the catalog, please go check out southshirav.com. Once again, that is southshirav.com. Hit the like and subscribe button. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can watch this. If you're watching this right now, you can click on and subscribe to this right now on the YouTube channel. Hit the hype button as well. Leave comments wherever you can, and support the show. And wherever you're listening, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Alexa, hit those 5 stars for me, please, and thank you. It drives the spirit of the show. Do it now, please. While your thumbs are still working, click it. It takes 0.4 seconds to do. So like I said, I appreciate you. If you don't do it, I don't want to think that you're a hater, but I might have to really think that you're subscribing to that channel. And we don't want you to do that. That's not in your bloodline. That's not in your spirit. All right. So once again, thank you for your support. We'll be back next week with some new episodes. For Cal Seed, this is the Ave Podcast on South Shore Ave Radio. Until next week, we out. Peace out.